And welcome back to 757 Saturday Sports Talk. Like, share, and subscribe to our Cova Sports TV YouTube channel, wherever you may be tuning in. Apple, Spotify, LinkedIn, Facebook, Virginia Preps, all over the web. We thank you for doing so and interacting with us all morning long. We have a special guest with us. He is the esteemed colleague of many of the greats we've had on this program, and he's right up there. Chuck Culpepper, Washington Post, college football. It's a busy time of year. It's almost Christmas, and we've got all the sports overlapping, and it's the playoff. Chuck, good morning. Happy holidays to you. Tell me about how pumped you were. You see my cohort here, Coach Young, is a diehard Notre Dame fan. So he was
I remember that.
Yeah. How much did you watch that game last night? We were actually at a basketball event, but people were texting me it's a boring game, snoozer. How much of that were you locked into last night, and what'd you make of the first college football playoff game under the expanded format?
I made a jet error. So I was on this flight last night where I couldn't get the Hulu video to go, and it was one of the smaller jets, the regional jets, the second flight. So I caught the whole first half, and then I watched a stat board in the second half and watched the numbers change. So it was really did not think it through well. I was on my way I'm doing the Ohio State game tonight.
So Chuck, you were on good morning to you. You were on a crop duster last night then?
Yeah, basically, yeah.
That's okay. You were holding on to your parachute, trying to get the game in while the plane was going over speed bumps like crazy. Right. I figured.
Yeah. On a cold night, it was like 2 degrees in Minneapolis when we took off. And so I got anyway, you don't need all the details of how I couldn't get the video to go. But, there are jets on which you could just watch it on their screens, which would be probably often a lot better. But I thought Notre Dame, of course, obviously controlled the game. Even if you take away the 98-yard run, which for when you're trying to evaluate how the game was played, maybe you can do that. But I thought it was, just pretty clear that they were superior.
Yeah, and I was hearing rumblings about Jeremiah Love, that great back who broke off the 98-yarder, maybe not being at 100%. I think he put that to rest, how healthy he was and effective with that long run. And we'll let Ed chime in with you in a little bit here on the matchup coming up with the Georgia Bulldogs, who I know you've seen as well from the SEC and viewed as one of the favorites in this whole thing. But I want to back up because you're seeing Ohio State, Tennessee this evening. How shocked were you? I don't know if you were in Columbus or how much of it you watched when they played Michigan. I was stunned. I didn't think it was possible at all that this Michigan team, which has been very vanilla and blah, could go into the Horseshoe and beat the Buckeyes to where now Ryan Day's hearing about his job being on the line here for this Tennessee game. How stunned were you that their offense was so conservative and anemic and they didn't really test the defense with those wide receivers that are so good?
So for that game, I also didn't get to see that game because I went to Texas at Texas A&M,
right,
which was the obvious call that day. There was that. If you go back to that previous Monday and you look ahead, that's the game you're going to pick. You're not going to pick Michigan and Ohio State because Michigan had no chance, right? So I listened to that game on satellite radio, and so I still think that they were not telling the truth about what was happening there because it was so far-fetched. I don't understand it. I still don't understand. I went back and watched some of it, and it has changed everything. It's changed the way, of course, they're viewing this season. It's a very, very, should we say, demanding fan base. It has changed the way that this game looks. You wonder about a little bit about what they are. They were home then, they're going to be home now. And you kind of wonder, I don't know, you wonder about things. It made you wonder about things. Now they could come out and they're slow starters. So is Tennessee. So I'd be surprised if anyone starts fast tonight. But, the Michigan game has, my friend Pat Forty in Sports Illustrated wrote a story on how they have to get over that now. And that's what we wonder. Can they?
Yeah, it's a big question. I think maybe the most compelling of the four games. I'll flip it here to Ed in a second. Let me ask that question. Is it the most compelling of these 4 first-round games? You've also got, obviously, Texas taking on Clemson today. You have SMU, which came roaring back against Clemson in the ACC championship, fell just short on that long field goal that was miraculous couple Saturday nights ago. They're taking on Penn State. So of the 4 games we've had in the first round here, 12-5, Clemson, Texas, Tennessee, Ohio State 9-8, SMU, Penn State 11-6, and Indiana, Notre Dame 10-7. Is the best game in your eyes, and that's where you are, is Columbus. Is it without a doubt in your eyes the Ohio State-Tennessee game?
It is. I would have picked the Notre Dame game as not that far behind it before it got going. I thought Indiana was really interesting. I thought you didn't know what you were going to get with Indiana. And I think the way the Indiana coach talks, which Nick Saban got after him about on the pregame show yesterday, which is really funny, it kind of adds to that. And, of course, he has his resume went through Virginia quite extensively. So so I thought that I'm a little curious about, could SMU do some damage and start working on the psyche of Penn State if it got off to a fast start or something like that. So, but yeah, I would say that at the outset, I put this game in Columbus pretty well ahead of the others, with the Notre Dame game, second.
Talking with Chuck Culpepper here at the Washington Post. Go check out his work online in the Washington Post. Also give Chuck a follow on Twitter, as they now refer to it, as X, I should say. You can find him at Chuck Culpepper1 at 757 Saturday Sports Talk here on Cova Sports TV, Ed.
Chuck, get into the Ohio State game. And first of all this talk about Ryan Day's job, to me, is amazing.
Amazing.
And it shows me the fan base, you're too focused on Michigan. Michigan is behind you now. Ohio State's playing for a national championship. Michigan isn't. Was their only loss. And well, if they don't win tonight, then he gets fired. He's not getting fired. It's a little bit past that stage for a program like them to get rid of your guy. And then all of a sudden people are jumping with the portal business and all that. The only way I think he's in trouble is lose the game, especially if they play horrible. And the money people, the booster people, come out and say, we're not putting no more money in this program until he's gone. That's about the only way now that level guy gets chopped at the knees right now. That's how I feel. I just think Ohio State people, come on now. Let's try to win this night. They'll win a national champion, let's say, and you'll still have people complain, yeah, but we lost to Michigan.
Yeah, yeah.
They'll still do that. But let's put that behind us, and because I know your time is short. The game, obviously, a lot of people are focusing on weather because Tennessee doesn't normally play in the real cold games, somewhat like SMU with the Penn State game. And when you break the game down, it seems like I hear a lot of talk. Tennessee has a great defensive line. Ohio State has a pretty good offensive line. That right there, and I've always said in these big games, it's that trenches that win or lose you the game. How do you assess that? And is it the biggest thing looking at tonight's game?
Yes. The Tennessee defensive line is exactly where the eye should go, I think. And, of course, Michigan has a really good one, too, and that mattered in that game decisively even. So I think, the Tennessee defensive line it's deep. It's great. They focused on it for, when Josh Heupel got there, and they focused on it wisely. They knew what league they were playing in. And I think it's the big, if it puts pressure on Howard, and if it does a good job against the run, which it's highly ranked in that category in top 10, I think it's number 8 or 7, then that's going to be a huge part of this matchup. And we were talking about Day. We almost had 2 years ago, we came very, very close to having the same thing, where Ohio State had lost to Michigan, but they got into the playoff.
That's right.
They're trying a field goal as the new year turns. I think the new year turned as the ball was going in the air.
It was tough because I was getting off a bus with ODU when we were at JMU, and I remember we were watching it on the bus, and I got home as the game was in. And you're right, it was New Year's Eve, correct?
And if they won that, Michigan had lost that day to TCU. They were going to play TCU. I think they were going to beat TCU, as much as I marvel at what TCU accomplished that year. But I was really, really curious how that would go and if it went that way. And Ed, that same thing. Okay, they win 4 games now. Are there still people? Yes, there are still people who are going to call it a disappointing season, I think. And wow, that's something. And sometimes I wonder sometimes I wonder what is the point of being an Ohio State fan at this point, because you win, you're a little disappointed because you were down 14-7 before you won 52-14 or something like that, and you lose, of course you're disappointed. They've kind of reached that point. I guess Urban Meyer helped usher them to that point where there doesn't seem to be any joy in the fanhood, in being a fan.
That's true.
Yeah, and that's my point. You get a program like Ohio State, they win 10, 11, 12 games, and there's still not enough joy.
Right.
And there's other programs. There's programs in this country, if they can win one more than they lose, people celebrating in the street. Well, we're Ohio State. We have a different standard. Come on, people. Alabama, everybody has standards. Penn State has standards. Notre Dame has standards. Where are you at the exact end of the year, and were you supposed to be there? That's really what you got to look at. As a coach, have you taken your talent to the furthest possibility it can be? If the answer is yes, you're coming back. It was a hell of a year. It's not, well, we got to meet Michigan every year, and we should go undefeated and average 50 points a game.
And so another huge thing to watch tonight is what's going to happen with the contrast that's going on in that department, which is how much orange will be in the stands. How much orange will we see? And that's because the visitor tonight has been out to the wilderness for, more than a decade, where they were not relevant. And here they are back. It's their first playoff. They didn't make any of the 14 playoffs. They didn't get close to any of the 14 playoffs. So here they are. They're back, and the fans are reinvigorated. And that's what it's really strange to me how that's what you need sometimes is some real irrelevance to get excited about relevance again.
Well, and that's my quick question we'll spin it to another game and let you roll here. We thank you for the time here. Chuck, you haven't been relevant since T. Martin and Peyton Manning were their quarterbacks in the 90s, right? Last time they've been in a big spot like this. They got a quarterback now. Help me out. It's Nico. I have no idea how you pronounce his last name, but it's pretty good.
I can spell it, which is my job, but you know what? The broadcasters always sail right through it, and that's why I am impressed by what they do, because they nail that thing every single time. So it's, for a while we had Tungo Valoa, which people struggled with, and we had Uiagalelei, and so this and these are quarterbacks from California and Hawaii who come to play in the SEC, and I think it's been just made the SEC even better than it was in so many ways. And so, I can spell it though, I guess.
Yeah, I think it's pronounced Iamaleava. So if you can do that, bless you. Ed still struggles with Giannis. He just calls him the Greek Freak from the Bucks. So
right. I just give the guys nicknames because you got to have a nickname anyways. Yeah. And you can't have the whole alphabet in your last name when you're a star. You got to cut it down a couple letters. So, and I don't mean to disrespect anybody's heritage and names and whatever. I took the name Young, Y-O-U-N-G. I am what you are. Easy to remember, but I'm not famous.
Hey, Chuck, we got James Boyd chiming in. You might remember him, former Penn State great, NFL defensive back out of our area in Indian River High School in Chesapeake. He says, PSU we are. So I want to throw it to you as we pull up the bracket. It doesn't have the updated score from last night. Best path here, because it feels like Oregon did not get the best path here. That's been a lot of the conjecture here since the playoff was announced. Not even so much did Alabama belong in more than SMU, but the seeding here as they move forward. Oregon's path, Georgia's path. Whose path do you like here in this thing? And if you had to kind of crystal ball it, maybe what's your view of a possible championship matchup here right now?
So I started thinking that I started thinking about Texas's path. Mm-hmm. Maybe that's the best, but Arizona State really, there's something scary about that, I think. Mm-hmm. And about maybe the time off will cool them off in some way,
That running back's really good too.
Yeah, and that whole story. So I would sort of hesitate to say, and I went to Boise for the Mountain West title game, and boy, to see that guy in person is a Superman. And it was just great to be around afterward too. And I just think maybe. I guess I'd say Texas because I think they're going to beat Clemson. That's the only thing I'm completely sure about. One thing, something Sonny Dykes said, TCU coach 2 years ago, has stuck in my head. He said, there are going to be more teams like us that go far, teams you didn't expect than it used to be. And he said it's because of the transfer portal. It's leveled things out. I think everybody knows that. So I guess I'd say Texas in that regard, but Texas gets to Oregon, I think, is that right? I can't see but Texas gets to Oregon in the.
Oh yeah, let's go back to the bracket here.
In the next.
I'll put it back up for you. No, you're good. Here you go. Texas would see. You're right. Oregon to be in the semifinal. Yep.
Yeah. So, with fear of Arizona State, I would think it's Texas. In that case.
James wants to know about, and I'm sure Ed will chime in on this with you too here as we finish up, Chuck. What about a potential if Notre Dame is to beat Georgia and Penn State's to get through SMU? Boise, what about a Penn State Notre Dame third round matchup? Two of the biggest programs in college football. He says, what's your take on that possible showdown?
Well, that would be strength against strength in terms of both of them are have really compelling defenses, I think, in a lot of ways. And I'd kind of like Penn. I love Penn State's quarterback more and more and more. I just think I saw him. I think I went to 3 of their games this year. I love him. I think he just gets better and better and better. I mean, I know that's another fan base that kind of spots the flaws a lot of times. And the kid's young, and we used to think that taking a quarterback taking a few years was normal. Now we want everybody to be Jaden Daniels right off. But I think I do like Penn State a lot in this bracket, and he's one of the reasons I thought he was a lot better by the end than he was by the middle, and he was better in the middle than he was at the beginning, I think.
Yeah, I'm fascinated to see how Kevin Jennings, that mobile quarterback for SMU, does against that Penn State defense, because I'm not sure he's seen it. You probably know better than me, Chuck, if he's seen a defense this year in the ACC that can do what Penn State's defense is capable of doing.
Good question. Yeah. And they didn't play some of the top teams in the ACC. They got dinged for that from some people, but so that there's that to consider too.
For sure.
And I think, guys, you too, looking at going to SMU Penn State, I saw the statistic or the note that the coldest game SMU played all year was Clemson. 45
it was
degrees. 45 degrees right now in Happy Valley would be a summer breeze.
Yeah.
So if SMU's hoping it'll be a little warmer, I can tell you right now, that's not growing up on the outer reaches of Happy Valley, about 40 minutes from there. It is a very passionate fan base. When Joe Paterno was there, oh my God, Joe Paterno he's actually the governor of Pennsylvania, everybody thought, because he was more well-known than anybody else. And not a whole lot has changed. I know they had the bad stuff that happened right at the end of Paterno's career and all that with that other mess. But the Penn State SMU is going to be the battle of SMU, supposedly, if I'm not mistaken, number 1 rush defense in the country, and Penn State is the number 1 rush offense in the country. So it's power against power. And a game like this, where it's probably not going to be a whole lot of throws, it will be who establishes the running game. Though I could see a pass in a dream, a winning touchdown pass is what's going to win the game, not the run. But it's going to be strength against strength. And this is a game where I do think a little bit the weather will have something to do with it.
Yeah, especially with the SMU offense. And yeah, I would think that too. And I purposely put this, this window of sun back here because we were all, talking about what could the weather conditions be for these first ever home playoff games. And it could have been something messy, but I think everywhere is getting up. Penn State College was maybe intermittent clouds was the last thing I saw. So pretty clear in these 3 places, and so it's going to be a matter of whether what is it going to be 25 degrees in State College? Is that going to have an effect? Maybe.
Yeah.
Well, I talked to my brother this morning. They're getting snow. It's about 40 miles from State College. They're getting snow there, and they're supposed to have flurries early in the game. No big snowfall of inches. I don't think that, and they'll keep that field fairly well clean there anyways. But I do think it'll play a little bit of a role in that game. There was a little bit of talk I heard on talk radio yesterday about maybe putting these games in bowls more to the south where the weather will be better. I like the first round at the team, the higher seed. They deserve it. It's college football. It's play with the elements. We're both in it. And I don't want to hear, well, it's not fair for a team from Texas to have to go play a team in the East and the West. It is what it is. Be lucky you're in it, and then go from there.
Well, and college football, because it's played through the years, through history, all its significant games in palm trees, Rose Bowl, Orange Bowl, or indoors, Sugar Bowl or whatever, doesn't have those. There's games in the NFL that we talk about forever: the Ice Bowl, the Freezer Bowl, the Tuck Rule game, where weather is just becomes such a part of the story and the lore. And college football doesn't have it that much. You can count that Cotton Bowl where Joe Montana led that comeback after his body temperature went down. That was really cold, but it's really going to be a new thing. And I like it very much too, for us to get some games where there's the story that goes on through the decades afterward is about the weather.
Absolutely. Well, hey, Trevor, you go ahead, Ed.
I wanted to ask Chuck on this, bouncing, leaving further ahead, way ahead. Chuck, there's been a little bit of talk about, the Alabama. We're talking another fan base. Some of those people, I think, are hopefully better check and make sure they're still alive, that they didn't get to move on into this. There has been talk that we will see 14 teams, and eventually probably capped at 16. Two questions. What do you think, and should it be 12 14 or 16, or leave it at 12?
Those other divisions have played with 16 for years. They seem to be doing fine. I think that's where it's going. I think there's more money in 16 than there is in 12. So that's the way to bet. I don't bet, but that's the way to guess. But I think, I think it's going to 16. I think it'll reach 16 eventually, maybe not soon, but within a few years. And I think 16 is nice. I think everybody plays the same amount of games. And this system of buys where you have like Arizona State and Boise State and to some degree Georgia, and those teams maybe did not have did Georgia have as good a season as Notre Dame did? Yeah, I guess so. They probably had more quality wins or whatever, but not by much, and the fact that Notre Dame's got to play more games to get to the title, but this conference title of Georgia is valued. I get why it's valued, but that's a little bit messy that some teams are playing. It's like the old March Madness when it had buys in it. Some teams play more games than others to get there.
Well, Chuck, my thing was, and I know my co-host and I argue with this, I say I want to see 16, but I want every conference champion. Yes, Marshall, Jackson, even though Marshall screwed up when the coach left, Jacksonville State, whatever, because they won their conference. They're Division I. Yes, they're not going to have the power rating. They're not going to have the eyes, whatever. And it's all driven by TV money. But when else could those teams ever get relevant other than is Marshall got to go to the SEC? Not going to happen. So put I think there's 9 conferences total. Put all those champions in, and then you've got to get your 7 at large, which is going to be dominated by SEC and Big Ten predominantly. That's just what I want to see, but I understand it's money driven,
right?
And people would rather see the 4th place SEC than any of those other 5 conference championship. I just don't think it's fair for those programs.
Yeah, it's
not fair.
Life ain't fair either, but you got to get a chance somewhere.
College football has always been extremely fair, but life, no, college football not fair either. Yeah.
Well, Chuck, we really treasure your work and enjoy your time with us. Enjoy the game there in Columbus, Buckeyes in Tennessee, and we'll catch up with you in the new year.
Thank you both so much. Thank you.
Hey, Chuck, make sure you got parka on, earmuffs, everything, because you're going to see your breath all game long.
That's the parka. Here's the parka.
There you go.
Okay,
he's already set. He's
Good.
ahead of you, man.
We don't want you sick. We'll probably get you back on right at the end of the playoffs and that, and look at what's going on next year and see where we were right and wrong. I know I'll be right a lot. I'm sticking with these dudes, and my partner over here, he'll be wrong a lot.
Those guys could win it.
They could.
Oh, boy, that would be tremendous.
They've got what you need. Yep.
I want to see it happen.
He'll drive me crazy. Thank you, Chuck. Have a good time.
Okay. Thank you.
Enjoy, Chuck.
Culpepper for the Washington Post. Coming up next, we've got Andrew